Please welcome Daniel Repovs. Look at that. I've never seen people so excited to see you, Daniel.
Hi.
Daniel, since I did not say anything, as I already mocked you this morning, that your title is quite long. So we know you work for Porsche. That's the first hint, right? So what do you actually do and what is your job?
Well, what do? I ask that question myself all the time. No, I'm at Porsche. I'm within the licensing team, working on actually two things in parts of gaming. One of them is all things sim racing, so that's licenses in the games and licenses for hardware and stuff. And the other one's actually events and experiences. So I don't know if some of you saw, we were not with the sim racing topic, but we were at Gamescom in August. That was also me. So if you like it, great. If you don't tell me. Yeah, that's in a nutshell what I'm doing, actually.
So all the cool stuff.
All the cool stuff.
Sim racing, gaming.
And trying to make other people have fun.
That sounds good as a start.
Yeah.
But obviously, Porsche sim racing, that by now, I think is a very big topic with what you guys are doing, and also a very long one. Can you give us a quick overview of what you're actually doing within gaming nowadays and in the past?
Well, obviously, we have a long history as a sports car manufacturer and have been driving on real tracks for a long time. And it's only logical to put that into a virtual world and try to be a part of as many virtual tracks as possible. In the end, gaming nowadays is somewhat like little model cars and play cars were some years ago. So it's a good way to attract new audiences, I guess, and to bring people closer to the brand and have experienced it. But in general, it's just, I mean, we're a sports car brand, so it's very straightforward to be in racing games of any kind, actually.
Well, you also did other games, right? You guys have been in Rocket League,
Yeah.
Fortnite, Overwatch.
Yeah, we do other stuff.
Did I miss one?
Yeah, we do other stuff too. And for these things, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what we're doing, but it's the same thing. Gaming in general is growing rapidly, and for these things like Overwatch, for example, we don't bring a car into the game because it doesn't make sense, but we actually bring the brand into the game. And for that partnership, although it's not sim racing, we basically talked to Blizzard and asked them, okay, how would the Porsche brand look in your world, and have them create that. So that's what we want to do, because I mean, working together with them, putting a car in there. Those of you who play Overwatch would probably agree that putting a car in Overwatch makes absolutely no sense. So that's why we didn't do it, because we always want to do things that make sense, that are authentic.
Talking about authentic and things making more sense then, sim racing. Obviously, the Porsche brand by now, let's see, you obviously had the 10 years of EA exclusive deal. I had to bring that up,
Yeah.
sorry. What was the first ever license for a game? Was it that one? Was it the EA deal?
That's a very good question. That actually, I must say I don't know that, because the EA deal was 10 years and that has been 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So back then, I'm not sure. I mean, there were Porsche cars in EA before the 10-year deal, I think. But
the good old times when no one paid license costs, basically. Yeah. And everyone was like, there's a car.
I mean, we're talking about the 90s. I was starting to do computer games, but yeah.
That's fine. Okay, that was a curveball.
Well, that's
fine. Let's talk about cars then, and how they actually make it into the game, right? Is it, from the get-go, it's quite funny because we actually talked about that a few years ago when I was still at RFAC about getting cars into the game. But is it companies approaching you guys? Are you running around thinking like, hey, who wants a new 911 Cup car? Or how does that work?
Yeah, no, we're marketing and not sales. So it's basically, it's a demand thing. Whenever a game publisher approaches us and says, okay, I want to put the car in my game because it makes sense or whatever, because it's natural, or because for any reason I want it there, I mean, we try to make it work. It's not like that we approach publishers in most cases and tell them, okay, yeah, try to use our cars here, do you want that? They usually come to us. And yeah, most cases, it's for sim racing, as we're coming together here, it always makes sense, actually, yeah, because they come. I mean, you guys, usually most of you are active sim racers and like to drive in competitions on virtual tracks, and you just expect some cars to be there because they're there in the actual world.
Then let's try to get that in timeline, how that works. Let's just assume I would have a sim racing title, let's call it The Last Garage or something, right? And I would like a Porsche Cup car in my game, right? How does that work? So I message you, it's like, hey Daniel, great car, you got there, 911, can I have it? And then what?
Well, yeah, then what? They usually we say, yes, but.
Do you send me one? It's like, I can scan it? Or
Yeah, no, it depends, actually. Sometimes that does happen, actually.
but then you send the car to someone?
Well, usually they come to us, but the scanning part. So there's two ways to get that. First of all, there's the business side of things. You have to contract stuff, you have to have the license agreement, but that's usually no biggie because that's not particular in any way for anyone. It's more of the same, essentially. Yeah, it's just paperwork. And then what's exciting is what comes afterwards. For the current cars, obviously we have 3D data, which we provide to the gaming publisher, so they can implement that and create it within their game. And then there's some loops and stuff where they say, okay, that's how the car looks, and then we look at it and say like, no, that's wrong. Yeah, that wing goes in the back and not in the front and stuff like that. But usually that's how it works. And we provide that data to them and they create the car. That's for current cars. But there's also obviously the historic cars, which is a bit more challenging because 3D data is not always available. Actually, it's very rarely available. So that's when something like what you just described happened, that people actually come to us either with a photo camera and take, I think it's about 30 to 60,000 pictures of the car and try to create a 3D model of that. Or they do a 3D scan where they put like little funky buttons on the car along any kind of lines and creases and go around with a scanner and scan the whole car. We've done that in the past, especially for historic race cars, which our museum has in their garage, obviously, but people then we have to find an appointment with the museum, find a slot where the car is available, where they can use it for 1 or 2 days for this kind of stuff. But publishers actually do that, yeah.
Okay, so I can have an historic one, I can have a current one. Yeah. How does it work though on the driving side then? 3D data is one thing, right? CAD data, so I can have the model. It looks like a 911 now. How do I make it drive like a 911 then?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Obviously, when we get the car, we also get the things that we can test on a simulator and drive. For most titles, it's not possible for everyone, but usually the driving dynamics is very much up to the publisher itself. And there's various reasons for that. One, obviously for current cars, we do not provide any in-depth performance data. We do provide like the specs and everything, but the in-depth performance data, we do not provide that because it's confidential information of the racing team racing in the competitions. Yeah, we don't want Ferrari to know why our car is behaving the way it is. So that's the one thing. Then the availability of that data is always different. And in the approval process, I mean, there's only a certain amount of people on this world who actually drive these vehicles in real life. And getting hold of one of these people to give us in-depth feedback on how the car needs to behave and stuff, it's sometimes kind of difficult and expensive. So what usually happens is the cars that you drive in-game, there are certain characteristics of the car that we know that the publisher is aware of, and we try to put that in there, that the 911 has the engine in the back and what that does to a car and stuff like that. But it's not like that there is a race engineer from our racing team going to the publisher, coming to us and like doing the very fine-tuning work of everything. It's just, for that, it's not big enough yet. And yeah.
Well, we can do that with a team, right? Because I remember the Porsche Cup back then.
Yep.
We went to the actual Cup teams to help out,
yep,
figuring out how to drive. So it's not something you guys are doing at Porsche.
No, it's not something we do. But some publishers actually.
So you better know a racing team that has one available.
Actually, that happens, and we do support with that. There is, I think, iRacing has done that, and other companies have done that. That they actually said, okay, we are going to be at, I don't know, Daytona next weekend, and is there any chance to get any kind of information from the car? And then we connect to our teams and the teams using our cars and check with them via the motorsports department. Hey, is there an opening? They want to do sound recordings. They want to do some sit-in. They want to have a camera going around and see if everything in the inside looks correct. And that usually works out. Yeah, they find these time slots where the publishers can do that and then go to Daytona to a customer team.
So sound recordings is also something that's rarely done directly from Porsche then?
Yeah, sound recordings is rarely done because for the regular series production cars, we do that for some things, for marketing purposes, like you need it for videos or something. But for motorsports cars, you don't need that. And to do a sound recording of a vehicle, to use it in-game, is a very complex and incredibly expensive process because you have to make it, to do it right, you have to attach a set of microphones around the car in different locations and basically have like revving through all the gears, having outside, inside, drive-by, all these kind of sounds. If you do a sound recording, you need to do it right. And it's extremely complex. We've done it before for some sims, or they have done it, they went to a race weekend and did some of these recordings. But for us to do it internally, it just blows everything out of scope.
All right, so I now have the car. Looks like the 911, sounds like one, drives like one. Those racers here that are a bit like me, have a bit more gray hair, and saw the beginning of sim racing. There was a time where a German car manufacturer, not you, said, car can't be crashed. If it touches a wall, 300 still needs to look like new. How does it work nowadays? If I want to set it on fire now, or I want to smash it 280 into a wall, can I make it real? Are you guys fine with that crashing the 911, or how does it work?
I mean, it's supposed to be realistic. Yeah? So anything that could happen in real life is something that we don't forbid people to do. Obviously, in the end, it's always the publisher's game. It's the game that they own, that they create, and they need to make it right. And we don't tell them not to. Yeah, there's only a few things where we say, okay, if we can avoid that, that'd be great. Like, for example, that's not a sim racing thing, but if you'd have people visibly on camera burning or dying within the car, yeah, like going into gore almost, you know, we wouldn't want that. But that's not a sim racing thing. But yeah, if they crash, they crash, and it's up to the publisher to make it look as good as possible, as realistic as possible, and we're not going to be the ones to say, yeah, no dents on our cars.
Okay, so we can do everything, like
can do everything.
Blown engine.
I mean, in the end, if you crash it, it's your problem, you know. You're going to lose.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's funny to say that because there had been a story in the past where car manufacturers said no to burning engines, and then you have to make sure that in the game it's never visible that the engine actually shows any fire, because their engines do not burn ever.
Yeah.
Which was not true, by the way. But
always don't burn ever, that's true, but yeah.
You do electric cars. Never mind. All right, so we got the car in the game. We can crash it. That's great. What about the tracks? Because Porsche also owns a few tracks, right? Is that something that you also give to games? Can I actually race on one of the Porsche-owned tracks? What are they?
Well, I mean, we have globally we have our own experience centers which we use for customer driving experiences. So, for example, closest to here is probably Hockenheim in Germany and Leipzig, and there's all over the world in Italy and in the US and stuff. So these are driving experience centers where there are actually real racetracks, which are usually a combination of very iconic corners and spots that we know from actual tracks. And you can have a driving experience there with an instructor and stuff like that, like you know it from whatever. Feel free to book it, by the way. It's awesome. These tracks, I mean...
He said he's not working in sales, but still.
We are open to licensing these tracks. I think we did license Porsche Leipzig to, I think it was Project Cars.
I also think it was that, yeah.
So if they want that, we do that. We do have 3D models of most of the tracks. Some of them are scanned, some of them are created. Yeah. If somebody wants to license one of the experience center tracks, they can approach us. There's no on that one.
We can go into a topic that's very sim racer related. Do you guys actually do the balance of performance in any of the games?
No. As much
so that
as
we finally have that solved.
Yeah.
It's not done by you guys.
Clearing that out once and for all. BOP is a game publisher topic. And that's also internally, for us at Porsche, we actually have like a own sports, not like a public, but an internal sports hobby group, whatever you want to call it. German term is Betriebssportgruppe. So we have that, and they always come to me. It's like, yeah, with the last update, the 911, the BOP is totally off. That's not wrong. It's too slow. Can you do something about it? So I'm like, no, it's up to the game publisher.
So you're not calling iRacing in front of the Daytona 24 like, hey guys,
yeah,
it would be good if a 911's winning.
Yeah, no, just that. And I mean, it's the same for every racing series out there. The series decides the BOP. Every series does so individually, sometimes even every weekend. So that's what game publishers do as well. So if you're not happy with the BOP or something, you just have to live with it, and we do just as well. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we have a next monthly or whatever with them, we can say, yeah, 911 has been performing pretty badly recently. That's probably because Ferrari had their call like 1 week earlier. So. But
not blaming anyone.
Yeah. No, but there's nothing we can do about it actually, and we don't want to, because it's not like that we want to go there and say, yeah, we have to be the best everywhere, we have to win everything. in real motorsports, we have an influence on that, and we try our best. But for virtual motorsports, it's up to the drivers and the publishers.
Yeah, we will talk about that with Eric Strain from the FIA and solve the BOP problem with him later on in the seminar. Give me one special moment, story of licensing. Is there anything where you think like that was really cool or that was really hard to actually get done as a licensing product, like a car into a game or a special story around it?
Yeah, I mean, I did talk about getting historic cars into the game earlier and that being quite a challenge. And quite some years ago, not all that many though, there was a case where Kunos actually approached us and said, we want to have the 917K. That's the car that won the first Le Mans title for Porsche back then. We want to have that in our game, and it needs to be on-spot realistic. And we said, wow, that car is somewhere in the museum. There is nothing for that car, because like way back then, we didn't even have technology to create the data that you're looking for. So we had to recreate all that. I mean, 3D data, I mentioned how that works, but they also wanted to have all the performance stuff and how the car behaved and how it's driving. And obviously, I mean, all our cars in the museum are still drivable, but we don't want that car to be driven like they wanted to drive it to get that data. So what they actually ended up doing is we went to our company's archive, took out notebooks with handwritten notes from the race engineers from back then, which were all in German, and they have a horrible handwriting. And they took all these notes, transcribed them, and translated them to Italian to recreate an actual replica of that car. And that was like a very long process in the end, but they really wanted to do it. And they spent a lot of time and effort on that. So if you ever drive the 917K in a Kunos game, just sit a moment and remember how hard these people worked for that.
Translate all of that. Great. Since we're coming to the end of your segment, real quick, are there any questions? Did I overlook anyone? We have one over there. Can we have a microphone? Run! Did. Oh, sorry.
You've talked.
It works.
Yeah. You've talked about BOP. I mean, in real racing, obviously you have different engines, different everything. But in sim racing, we could basically have everybody have the same specs with different shells, so that everybody can race fairly. And if you are sponsored by a Porsche, you don't have if the BOP is not in your favor, you don't have you're not at the back of the field. So why is this not implemented yet into video games that for esport purposes, all the cars have the same acceleration, cornering, just for those purposes that teams can be sponsored, whether it's BMW, Porsche, or whatever, Hyundai, they also can race all fairly. And then esports team could actually have real partnerships with the brands.
That is a very good question. I think it's a question that also is up to the publishers, up to the entire organization to solve. And that's also, we need to see if there's a certain demand for that. I think for some competitions, they already do that. I think you guys do that, right? That you have...
They only have an F4 car, that's the same anywhere.
Okay. But I think that in some competitions, the different makes and stuff are normalized. But... I think it's always a question up to the organizer of the competition.
Well, we do it the other way around now. I think I know the answer.
Okay.
So you will just be the whole... Okay.
Go ahead.
Actually, I think it's quite simple. The difference is back in the days, games where basically a car was a box that had 4 tires and you put a value to it, right? It had speed 8, cornering 6, braking 3, right? And if you wanted to change that, you all gave everyone 5, right? Braking 5, acceleration 5. Nowadays, a car in a game is the result of a calculation of absolutely everything, right? How the tie rod is placed, how everything moves, because in the level we are now with sim racing calculates all of that. So there is no actual end value besides obviously the specs you give the engine, right? So you could not take the shape with a different wheelbase and whatsoever and just make it the same, because it doesn't work that way, because the suspension underneath is not the same. So to do that, we would actually need to take the body off, make it underneath, that's the generic, basically, take everything the same tie rod, same way the axle is built, and then try to push the body back on and hope that it works with the wheelbase. I think that is the bigger issue. Because, like I said, it's not a value anymore like it was back in the days. So it's way harder to get them to do the same thing. Because all of the games, if we're looking at iRacing or Kunos whatsoever, they have aero balance. All of that is down to the body shape, right? So different body shapes will create different aero balance, right? So we would need to also somehow get that done, or just add like an invisible body around it that always acts like a BMW shape, a Porsche shape, whatever, so that everyone's on the same. But it's not that easy anymore as it sounds like, actually.
Yeah, but then you're never going to be big in esports.
That's a longer discussion. We can have that, definitely. I'm up for that. Yeah. I did esports for many, many years now. I'm creating that. So it is hard. I get that. And obviously we know with like Rensport, for example, has all the manufacturers in there and stuff like that. It's not easy and they all want to win. Yep. Of course. You go in there, you put your name on it, you want to win.
And even they don't do it right.
And no, it doesn't work there either. Yeah. All right. But we can pick it up after the seminar, all right, and discuss that. Any other question? Anyone else before we end up with Daniel? No? Great. Then a big applause for Daniel. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.